Daniel Kaplan, a freelance sports business writer, spent many years at The Athletic and the Sports Business Journal covering stuff just like this. Daniel, thanks for joining us this morning.
Well, thanks for having me.
Is this a surprise to you at all, Daniel, that the Celtics are for sale?
It's a surprise, yes and no. I mean, I had no idea the Celtics were going to be put on the market, but we've seen a number of NBA teams sell in recent years. Mark Cuban with the Dallas Mavericks, Lazary with the Milwaukee Bucks, Michael Jordan with the Charlotte Hornets, and we just saw 15% of the Nets sold. So there's a desire to take advantage of these high franchise valuations.
So high franchise valuations are. What's your best guess? I mean, we keep referring to Forbes and $4.7 billion for the Celtics. Do you think that number is accurate? Is it too low? I mean, like what's your best guess of what we're talking about with the Celtics?
I mean, that number I think was put together several months ago, and there's the expectation that the new NBA national media deals will be 3 times the old deals. So I would think that 4.7 is low, although it does come with a caveat that Wick says he's not going to give up the governorship of the team until 2028. So there might be some discount factored in that the new owners don't get full control of the team for 4 or 5 years. But I would say 4.7 billion is a low valuation right now.
So why now, Daniel? Does this have to do with the current state of the NBA with the second apron and, the contract values and player contracts going way up? I mean, we've done the math. The Celtics, up, in 2025-26 could essentially have a $5 million payroll between, player salaries and the luxury tax. Is this because of that? How much of a factor is that in Wick's decision to sell, you think?
Well, I'm not privy to what's going through his mind and why. I mean, he said estate planning and that sort of thing. Which there's probably something to that, but I think there may be a feeling among some in the sports industry that we're reaching peak valuations among franchises, and that if you're going to sell, now's the time to sell. In terms of the salary cap and being way over, having the luxury tax assessments that they're confronting, that all can get factored into the sales price. I mean, it's like no different than buying a house that if it needs renovations, you pay less than if it doesn't need renovations. So the luxury tax bill facing the Celtics will simply get factored into the sales price.
All right, now you just referenced it, and I know when I read it yesterday, I said, come on, what does this even mean? When Wick put in the statement in the first paragraph, for estate planning purposes. Well, what? I just explain that to me, because I'm cynical, skeptical. I'm thinking, what does that have to do with selling the Celtics? What does that? Explain that to me, because I don't get it. What does that mean?
Well, usually when you hear estate planning with teams, it has to do with managing the transfer of the team to the heirs, the children of the owner. In this case, it's apparent that he's not going to pass on the team to any heirs, and they're going to be confronted with a massive inheritance tax bill because they bought the team for $360 million, and it's going to be sold for, let's say, $5.5-6 billion. That's a massive estate tax. So I'm not privy to his accounting, and I'm not totally in on the ins and outs of estate planning at that level. But clearly, there is something to that in terms of planning for that kind of tax hit. But my best guess is that you have these guys who come from private equity backgrounds like here, and they look at the team not as a asset to be passed on from generation to generation like so many other family-owned teams, but just as an asset that appreciates, and at a certain point you take your profits.
So you plan for that by selling the team. You plan for it. I'd rather sell the team than deal with or have somebody deal with an inheritance tax that is just off the charts.
Again, I'm not privy to,
I know this in general. I'm just saying, just so I understand it, just in general. I know it's maybe not specific to Wick, but just in theory, somebody who they could look at it that way of, hey, it is probably better business to sell it than to deal with the taxes.
It also I don't know what his other business is. If some are taking losses and he can offset the inheritance tax with those losses. It's without a proper examination of his whole full portfolio of companies and where they are in their life cycle and their profitability. It's tough to get at precisely, when he says estate planning, why he's saying that and why it makes sense right now.
Yeah, Daniel, I mean, I think what you're saying, and Daniel Kaplan joining us on the Volkswagen Dealers Expert Hotline, sports business writer for the Athletic and SportsBuisnessJournal, I think you got to it. It's a good time to sell. It's a really good time to sell, and Wick's going to make a lot of money, and that's kind of the decision he's making here. I mean, is that a fair assessment?
I think that's a very fair assessment. And as you watch in sports, as people from private equity, we hear about private equity investing in teams, but we also see private equity becoming owner. The people who run private equity firms individually becoming owners of teams, and they may not look at it. We always hear how it's a civic asset. It's a public trust when someone owns a sports team. A lot of these people who come in from those backgrounds, they don't look at it that way. They may look at it just as an asset that appreciates, and they think maybe we've reached peak value, or now it's a time to sell for whatever reasons, whether it be estate planning or other business reasons, and they sell. It's not your mom and pop's ownership where the expectation is to pass it on to the next generation.
Daniel, I think, the thing that's emerging here is, we got late last night Steve Paliuka, who is, a minority owner of the Celtics and obviously pretty front-facing, for the organization in regards to the ownership group. He expressed in no uncertain terms that he plans, to try to buy the Celtics. I would have to imagine that there are a lot of big pocket, folks. You can name them, right? The Jeff Bezoses of the world who will probably also be interested. How do you see this playing out? Like, just your sense in this, your read on this. How much of a chance does somebody like a Steve Paliuka have? Compared to the big pocket folks elsewhere. Considering that Paliuka also has a stake in the team already, how much does that matter in this process?
Well, I mean, that gives him a head start for sure, since he's already vetted, and he doesn't have to buy the full team. But the Celtics are a historic sports brand. I mean, they're up the Lakers, the Yankees, the Celtics, the Cowboys. If it's an auction, it's an auction that's going to. You mentioned Bezos, but it's going to attract. I mean, just the creme de la creme of high, of American wealth, and maybe international wealth too. So I've seen John Henry's name kicked around. I think it's a little early to be picking out who might buy the team, but there won't be a shortage of bidders for a brand like the Celtics.
I have a question, Daniel, on this, and we talked about it earlier. I just want to get your take on it. The Celtics don't own their building. They're renters, so to speak. And so if you are a prospective owner and you come in and you say, I'm spending a bunch of money on this franchise and I don't own the facility. Let's say I don't want to build a new arena either. That's just too much money. Can you think of examples of somebody who has come in and they are able to tap into revenue streams that other people haven't thought of? And I guess my question is, do you see those revenue streams out there, even though maybe this is the peak time to sell, maybe there's another level to get to for somebody?
Well, not controlling the building is not advantageous. That is something all teams want, and I don't know what the lease arrangement is between Delaware North and the Celtics, who controls what, but that may be something a new owner wants to take a look at. So, and if that doesn't go well, I wouldn't be surprised to start to hear threats of building a new arena, going elsewhere in Boston. So you're right that they don't control their regional sports network either. So from that respect, it's not ideal. But the percentage of local versus national money is just going more and more in the direction of national money, as we see with this new media deal. So while it's a concern, and you'd want to try to find more revenue streams out of your arena, and maybe develop land around the arena, which is the hot thing to do right now. It's still, the NBA is gushing money, so I don't think anyone thinking of buying the Celtics is going to say, well, I don't control the arena, so I don't want the team.
Interesting stuff. Daniel Kaplan, the Athletic Sports Business Journal, longtime sports business writer. Thanks for sharing your insights this morning. Much appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
If you like that clip, check out more videos from Toucher and Hardy here. For more Celtics analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.